to be portfolio investors. Do you think they're credible when they say that?
I think our domestic investors make credible arguments there. We tend to think that only foreign investment is what brings foreign exchange inflows and so on and so forth. I think it's a mistake because foreign investors look to see whether domestic investors have confidence in the economy. If your domestics are not investing, foreign investors will want to stay back. And that is why, as you correctly observed, a lot of the inflows we've seen are portfolio investments, not real risk investments. They buy blue chip stocks on the Nigerian Stock Exchange, which has very high rates of return, rather than coming in and starting greenfield projects. For us here in Kaduna, luckily we have attracted lots of greenfield projects. Companies that have come in to do fresh investments from the ground up. But the more we've done that, the more we've realized that we need to work more on domestic investors. And we tend to give a lot of incentives to foreign investors and ignoring the domestic investors. But once you can give even better incentives to domestic investors, they will be able to take more risks. It is true that most Nigerian businesses prefer short-term investments, trading type kind of investments, but we've seen many of them start that way and then gradually diversify based on the incentives given to them. One of the best examples, of course, is Dangote Group. Up until 2001, Aliko was not really manufacturing cement. It was importing bulk cement and processing it. But from the privatization program, when Benue Cement was sold to him, he has gone into real production. And today, because of the incentives given in that sector under the Obasanjo regime, Nigeria is self-sufficient in cement production within a 10-year period. So there is a lot of sense in sitting down with domestic investors, looking at what their challenges are, and offering them the same or even superior incentives than we do for foreign investors. I agree with that.
So let's come back to Kaduna.
Yeah.
How much of that are you offering to the local investors? I mean, some of your commissioners have been here, your colleagues have talked about how they mentioned Olam, they mentioned the truck company, Mahindra.
Yeah.
Now, they've also talked about one other company which is local.
Yes.
But I asked a question in terms of how much of these incentives are you giving to the local companies so that they can pick up?
Yeah, well, unfortunately, most of the incentives that companies need are federal. Okay, tax holidays are federal. We can't, we can waive personal income tax, we can waive some kinds of consumption taxes, but what I think the states can do to ease the life of investors is access to land. That is often a big problem. Just, acquiring land and, getting certificate of occupancy is a headache in some states. In Kaduna, we've made it very easy. We have made access to land extremely easy. We have also, in some cases, provided free land to the companies. For instance, Olam required land that costed the state government 400 million naira in compensation, nearly $2 million. But we decided that, yes, we will bear that cost to attract $150 million in investment. We think it is worth the cost. So instead of getting the investor to have the headache of paying compensation, negotiating with communities and so on, we did all that. We just gave them title. Come, land is free, just put in your money. And within 18 months, we had $150 million investment. So there are some incentives the state governments can do, but quite limited. Land, approval processes for development, having a good commercial disputes mechanism. We have alternative dispute resolution. Kaduna State courts are the second best in terms of resolving commercial disputes. So this kind of things are what investors look at to see, well, if I have a problem, will it be solved? How much is the state doing to hold my hands? We established the investment promotion agency to be a one-stop shop. So when an investor comes to Kaduna, he goes to Kadipa and doesn't need to interface with any government agency. If you want land, Kadipo will go and get it for you. If you want approval, Kadipo will go and get it from Kasuga. If you want business premise registration, Kadipo will go and get it from
So the other agencies can just go around their normal businesses.
Yes.
Okay, but when you say the bulk of the incentives that these investors need, both local and foreign, they're federal. So are you in conversations with the federal government to see how much of these rebates or incentives you can get?
Yes, there is.
And what's the response like?
There is a presidential committee on ease of doing business chaired by the vice president, and there are 6 governors representing the Nigerian Governors Forum. I happen to be one of the 6, and there is ongoing conversation, to improve that. I'll give you just one example. I was speaking to a domestic investor who wanted to do large-scale ranching in Kaduna State. He was planning to bring 30,000 heads of cattle from South Africa to start a huge ranch with an outgrower scheme so that the pastoralists can be sedentarized, which was a brilliant idea. And we were willing to hand over one of our grazing reserves for that experiment. But while we were having this discussion, the federal government reduced import duty on powdered milk to 5%. Okay? And the main reason why this investor was coming in to do this is not to help us solve the farmer herdsman problem, but because Nigeria spends over $1 billion every year importing powdered milk. And we can produce this. And he has seen an opportunity and he was willing to invest. While that was going on, we just saw this, so he walked away.
Wow.
So we had to go to the federal government to say, look, you are killing this. By reducing the duty on imported milk, we've just lost $100 million investment. So, this conversation is ongoing, and I'm happy that the federal government is listening.
We'll let you continue in that train of thought when we return from this break in just a moment. Don't go away.